Today I'm trying a new recipe, wild rice salad. I found this recipe on a website called the Detoxinista. I will link to the original recipe down below. I did make a few changes to the recipe and I will explain those changes as I go along. But first I started off by peeling and dicing one apple. The recipe did not specify which apple to use. I used Granny Smith because I thought the tartness would be nice in the recipe. I didn't do a super fine dice on the apple, I just chopped it into bite-sized pieces. Next up, the recipe called for a half cup of chopped parsley. I didn't have quite a half of a cup, so I just chopped what I had on hand. I thought it sounded like a lot at first, but it turned out to be just the right amount. Next up, I diced 2 stalks of celery, and I did peel them before I diced them because I really don't like the stringiness of celery. I used to think I just plain didn't like celery, but once I started peeling it before I used it, I found that I love the flavor, and the celery here just gives a really nice crunch and texture to the salad. So if you think you're not a fan of celery, try peeling it first and see what you think. Next up, I just sliced 2 green onions. I think green onions were the perfect choice for this salad because I think like red, yellow, or white onions would have been a little overpowering, but these were nice and mild and just gave a good flavor contrast. To start assembling the salad, I first started with mixing the dressing in a big bowl. I added orange juice, apple cider vinegar, olive oil, and some honey. Now I used a honey substitute to keep the sugar down in this recipe a little, but you can definitely use regular. It's what the original recipe calls for. Then I added some Dijon mustard, some salt and pepper, and gave it a good whisk. Once I started whisking, I realized I forgot to add the orange zest, so I did stop and add that in. Once I got the dressing together, I then began to add in the rest of the ingredients for the salad. I started with the wild rice, and I do want to note here that I cooked the wild rice in a lot shorter time than the recipe called for. I then did add in the pecans and also some craisins, sunflower seeds, celery, chopped apples, green onions, parsley, and then I gave it a good mix. Now, a note about some of the substitutions I did make. As I referred earlier on the wild rice, the original recipe called to cook it in 4 cups of water for 50 minutes. This was way too long. The wild rice I had was fresh wild rice and not commercially produced, so that may have been a difference, but it turned out way too mushy. So I tried it again. I went just over 20 minutes in 3 cups of water, and that gave the perfect texture for me. Your results may vary, so I would suggest just to keep a close eye on your texture. Once it begins to burst, it should be ready. Just give it a taste. I also substituted sunflower seeds for the pepitas because that's what I had on hand. Overall, we really loved this recipe. I think you will too.